And we are live. It is Friday, May 22nd, 2020, 5:02 p.m. Sorry, we're a couple minutes late today. Boris Johnson's popularity ratings fall as the rallying around effect starts to fade, new poll shows, reports The Independent, and we have big ass Kim Jong-un news today, also from the British press. The Daily Mail, that wonderful source of information and false information and fun kind of information, reports that a North Korean state newspaper has admitted that the country's leader, Kim Jong-un, cannot bend space and time after years of mythologizing him. The admission from the Rodong Sinmun newspaper is the latest sign that the country is moving away from propagandizing myths about its leaders. I don't believe that, and is instead taking an approach that focuses on humanizing the dictator, according to analysts. So there's no more bending space and time for Kim Jong-un, which means even Kim Jong-un is not allowed to have fun anymore. But in lieu of fun, we have one thing that can actually pass as fun, which is a very cool a guy who does drawing workshops, Ben Ponte, and something that cannot possibly pass as fun, though Alvin Cheung is a wonderful person and a fun guy. We have an update on the awful situation in Hong Kong.
Okay, before I do that, I have to give my weird insect news, which today comes right from like 2 feet from me, in which, as you were talking, Ben, this giant spider emerged from my sweater. It's sitting on the table and just walked. It is like, I don't know where it went, and now I'm very anyways, that's your insect news
I think
for today.
We're going to leave aside. I don't want to hear from all of the people in the Q&A. Spiders are not insects. I knows that. This is improvisation. And when you're doing improvisation and you see the little insect, you know it's time for Murder Hornet news, but you don't have any Murder Hornet news. You've got a spider. You use that. So save the pedantic 2-leg thing, 6 legs versus 8. It's a math problem. Chill, guys. Alvin Cheung.
Oh God, it's here.
Okay, meanwhile, while Kate is panicking,
I'm gonna turn off my mute. I'm gonna mute myself. Alvin, you should talk about Hong Kong.
Oh God, it's here is the perfect segue, actually.
All right, Alvin. So, for those of you who don't know Alvin is a barrister, as they call it in Hong Kong. You're also a professor in Ontario. Is that right?
I am an adjunct, so I'm in the academic precariat. I am also, heaven help me, trying to finish a JSD, which I will be defending via Zoom very soon.
That is awesome. And what Alvin is also, very importantly to the lawfare community, is somebody who really has a deep and firsthand understanding of the legal situation in Hong Kong, and is, I would say, in a very realistic and granular way, thoroughly depressed about it all the time. And Alvin, I want to just, it's in the news again. And I just have one simple question for you, but it's a question that contains multitudes. Is this the end?
So there is a sense in which it is and a sense in which it isn't. And I say that because the threatened bill would entrench as a matter of law what has been happening as a matter of fact for several years, which is that when it comes to any vaguely important policy decision regarding Hong Kong, Beijing is calling the shots, regardless of whether it's supposedly within the scope of Hong Kong's autonomy. And I say that for one very important reason, which is that the proposed legislation would be imposed upon Hong Kong by the National People's Congress. And it would do that by incorporating whatever it eventually passes, and it will pass, into something called Annex 3 of the Basic Law. Now, under Article 18 of the Basic Laws, which is Hong Kong's constitutional instrument, only matters relating to foreign affairs, defense, or other areas outside the scope of Hong Kong's autonomy can be the subject of Annex 3 incorporation. The very fact that Hong Kong is supposed to enact its own internal security legislation shows that no internal security legislation should be incorporated by Annex 3. Not that that sort of nicety matters to Beijing at the moment, but this is just one example of how emboldened they are now to tear up the rulebook.
And, you know, it was only a few weeks really ago that there was massive street protests in Hong Kong and a genuine challenge to the regime from a kind of people power situation. That got kind of wiped out by coronavirus. Do you expect this weekend people to say, kind of fuck it, it's time to go back into the streets? Or is this going to be, in your estimation, a successful use by Beijing of the fearful state of the population vis-a-vis the virus to effectuate very substantial political change?
I don't think the Hong Kong public at large will be deterred. I think there's a very real sense in which a lot of people feel that they have nothing left to lose, right? All the people who had the foreign passports or the financial means to leave have, for the most part, left. And everybody who's left has woken up to the realization at some point over the past 6 years that all of the things that were supposedly promised under the Sino-British Joint Declaration or under the Basic Law have just gone up in smoke. So when you have a local population that feels it has nothing to lose, really all bets are off.
That sounds like the sort of thing that the Chinese Communist Party would take as a threat of violence. I totally get that you are in no sense either in a position to threaten violence or actually trying to do so. But is your prediction that we're going to see a lot of violence in the next few days?
There will almost certainly be bloodshed. We have seen, certainly over the past year, if not longer, that the Hong Kong police force itself is perfectly able and willing to attack the local population and to engage in openly political partisan enforcement. That's only going to inflame tensions further.
Alvin, let's have a longer conversation about this next week on the Lawfare podcast. Audience, we are going to turn back to our theme of the week, which is Arts Week, in a moment. But if you have questions for Alvin before we let him go, raise your hand and I will rapture you in. I think we have no chance of Zoom bombing right now. So feel free to just signal me if you want to come in before we let Alvin go.
Before I start really hitting the gin would be good, yes.
All right, I think you are in the clear, Alvin. thanks so much for joining us on, I think, literally 45 minutes notice. My peeps will be in touch with you about the Lawfare podcast next week.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Hi,
you,
Alvin.
sir.
Say hi to Alyssa.
Bye.
Every time Alvin
And Alvin, feel free to hang around for the rest of the show because we are about to do something super cool with somebody. This is the first guest that neither Kate nor I has ever met before. So this is kind of like a total like shot in the dark. Kate, explain Ben Ponte, our guest, or maybe Ben should explain himself.
Well, I can explain how I found Ben, and then I can let Ben explain. So you know that I'm an early adopter of all things internet, and study the internet and the laws of the internet. Anyways, a few months ago, the head of trust and safety for Airbnb was telling me that they've been switching all of their experiences over to online experiences, and I've been meaning to go and check out just what that meant. And so I thought that maybe for today, to surprise you, Ben, I'd get you a llama or some other type of thing. But like there were like sheep that I could have gotten, but they were in New Zealand and the time difference was really fucked up.
Ben,
and so
how do you feel about being compared to a llama and a sheep right now?
That's a great way to start.
I didn't know that I could get an actual person. I just thought that I would get I didn't even know it was an option.
I might even have one here, perhaps,
You are from Australia. I'm just gonna say this is so close. But no, and so I went on, and there was I put in kind of the parameters of when we needed somebody, and Ben was not available until later tonight. And then I sent him and I was like, well, this guy seems awesome. And I looked up his website and I looked at all the stuff that he was doing, and I was like, well, it'd be so cool to do a show about how artists are turning kind of these online experiences into a way to kind of still make a living, even though no one's moving around and doing things anymore. And in particular, someone who I've seen, I'm from New York originally, I've lived in Brooklyn for the last 12 years. And so I was super excited to I've seen people like you giving tours and talking to people and doing things like that. And so it's I've been wondering, as all of this has happened, how people are continuing to make a living that did that kind of were, supplementing their artist income off of those types of experiences. And so when I found you, I was like, well, this will be kind of fascinating. Perfect. If he can come on at 5, and then you could. And so it was perfect.
Yes. It's incredible to just drop in like this. It's very nice.
Welcome,
Thanks for having me.
Ponte. You are the capstone here of Artists Week on In Lieu of Fun. So introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do in normal times and how you have transitioned in coronavirus times.
Right. Well, I'm a visual artist. As you might guess, if you can see this.
Beautiful, yeah.
So I'm in my studio at the moment, but normally I take people sketching around the streets of New York City. So I run experiences that have always, I guess, focused on what I think of as the experiential aspects of drawing. So not the technical aspects, but what actually happens through the drawing process and how drawing helps you pay attention in a different kind of way. And it kind of really opens it up for people who don't normally draw and makes it really accessible. So I get groups of people from all around the world coming normally. And then obviously when this hit, that became off limits. So I started to think about how it might be applicable to this situation. So what I've really focused on over the last month or so is this whole interior situation that we're all sharing at the moment, and how drawing might help us in some sense come to terms with that, and if it can. And the more I started to explore that with people, the more I realized that actually written into the kind of physiology of drawing is that relationship between inside and outside, because you're always exploring how your internal reality relates to what's in front of you, So that's what we explore. It sounds kind of theoretical and maybe philosophical, but it's actually really practical. So it's been a lot of fun and pretty amazing experience, actually, to share these moments with people during this moment, you know.
And so tell us a little bit about the platform that you're using to do this. So how does one go from, you know, the only thing I knew about you when I made this announcement was that Kate had sent me this link to your profile for your seminars on Airbnb. So tell me about how you go from doing workshops on drawing and street tours in New York to doing what you're doing on Airbnb.
Right. Right. So my street tours were originally part of Airbnb Experiences as well, right? But in terms of how that translates to online, at first, I must admit, I was kind of skeptical about the possibilities there, given how clunky sometimes it can feel in a Zoom situation. But curiously, I have to say, it's almost more well suited to what I do than the actual physical experience of being on the street with people. It creates a kind of focus. I have groups that range from 2 to 30, and we all join in, share sketches along the way. You can hold it up to the screen pretty easily. But it's interesting just in terms of, the Zoom situation is an imaginary space, because it's coming to us through images. So we don't tend to think of it like that. But if you stop and for a moment and think, where are we right now? We're in an imaginary space together. So I think it's really well suited to exploring the imagination. And it's not immediately obvious, but it becomes obvious through the experience. Yeah.
So talk about the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
How did you get involved with, what is Airbnb Experience? I'd never heard of it until today.
I can say this. I just know the background of how they did it. So they started offering basically experiences that you could do through Airbnb. And what was hilarious about this was it was at the midst of, I do research on kind of how internally all of these companies create their policy and make their own private law inside their companies. One of the big places that does this and is of course, Airbnb has a number of liability provisions, but then just shit happens when you rent a house or you rent an apartment or you do whatever, and things go to hell, right? And that aren't covered by the agreement. When they started doing these, just FYI, you are such a perfect version of this, but one of my favorite ones that people wanted to do was a hot air balloon ride where they literally just stuck people in a fucking hot tub and floated them up into the air with drinks.
Oh my goodness, I never saw that one.
What could go wrong?
And Dave, my friend, who is the head of trust and safety at Airbnb, was and then I said no. And then the other thing is, it turns out that and then it's what, you don't want us to have fun? We can, why can't we do this? Anyways, so there's things like that. There were zebra rides. As it turns out, there is a reason based in biology and years of attempts at hurting them that zebras do not want to be fucking ridden and are not capable of being domesticated.
Yeah.
So if you advertise zebra rides on Airbnb, people are gonna fall off and get kicked by zebras. And so it just was and I remember saying to Dave, I was this seems like the worst idea ever. I cannot believe this is going to be a reasonable thing that people do. But anyways, and there's you now. Sorry.
Right. So this is, I guess, the other extreme.
So how did you get involved with Airbnb Experiences and how have you used it as a Australian artist in New York?
Yeah. Well, I guess I should say I've been here about 10 years now. It's gone very quick. And I'm also a yoga teacher. So I've always sort of been interested in the relationship between between art and yoga, I guess, but more so the mind-body relationship, how drawing affects that, you know. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. But in terms of how I actually got going with this, I was spending a lot of time actually on the subways and sketching. Most of my work sort of starts from direct observation, I guess. And I think a friend of mine might have mentioned to me, it'd be great if you could take people along for you on your kind of sketching adventures. You know, I'd get one ticket and sort of stay on the subway all day and just see where I ended up and sketch my way around the city, you know. And so I was sketching around the city myself. So I just got this idea it'd be, you know, great to bring people along. I think when you're drawing, you sort of see the city in a different kind of way when you're sketching. And then at around the same time, I found out about these experiences and probably saw quite a few similar to what you mentioned, Kate, and wondered whether or not I could slot in there somewhere. But you know, I found my place, and then had it advertised on a bunch of other platforms too, so people could come directly through my website as well. But yeah, it's been a really nice, positive response, and it kind of allows me to get out of the studio and share my practice with people, you know.
So how long have you been doing it? And tell us about the transition to online Zoom seminars.
Yeah, so the Airbnb Experiences, I think, launched in October 2017. I happened to be in that first batch that went through. And so that was the first time I started taking people around the city through that platform, and then kind of branched out a little since then. And then the switch to Zoom just happened a month ago, you know. Obviously, at the moment, most experiences were no longer viable, you know, and travel was obviously no longer viable. So Airbnb had to think about how to make that transition. Yeah, it was interesting making that switch to the Zoom platform. As I said before, it's just really I immediately got a sense of, you know, this could go to a different place here. And it's not so much a substitute for what I was doing before, but I think it's just a kind of addition, a different kind of exploration, you know. Yeah.
And how is it different? Like, talk about how it's different.
Yeah, well, immediately I think what I like to sort of bring attention to when people jump into the Zoom session is that we are occupying an imaginary space, you know. We're all here in this kind of physical nuts and bolts material interior space at the moment, which is the kind of shared experience as well. But then as soon as you come into this Zoom window, that takes precedence. And so the imaginary reality kind of superimposes itself upon whatever else is going on around us. So that became part of the exploration, you know, where are we right now when we meet in these spaces, and how can that be explored through the act of drawing. And so I have, you know, just some very simple exercises that are designed to take people into the imagination and into the experience of the drawing process, and to really kind of tease it apart without worrying about the end result, you know. Yeah, it's been incredible, kind of sharing insights along the way as well. And I sort of have always loved this idea that everybody really has their own way of making marks, you know.
So how many of them have you done?
So now it's hundreds.
Online.
I'm not sure, but it's yeah, hundreds, maybe.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's been a busy month. Yeah, it's been an amazing response, and I get you know, anything from families separated through this situation, chiming in from around the world, to corporations wanting like a team building exercise, you know, to date nights, which I had last night with a lovely couple from Brooklyn, actually. Yeah.
That's really funny.
to
Wow.
like people who just like are like, hey, come on our live YouTube show last minute. Yeah, cool. So do you wanna start doing something? I mean, I feel it's like I
show
don't want
us
to like
what you do.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, what?
I have drawing experience.
All
Ben
right.
doesn't.
I have
Okay, well,
none and no capacity.
Excellent. This is a great place to start, Ben. Fantastic. I would say that the majority of the people who come on my experiences are not practicing artists, and I always remind people it's like something we all do as kids, right? And I really think we take in the world in images before we put words to it, right? So I like to get back to that way of looking at things, and that's what it's about. So we can do a little exercise now, if you like, that sort of taps into that idea.
I would love that because I have to
Yeah.
say that my visual sense is so bad, and I mean so bad,
Yeah.
that as long as I can remember from the time that I was a very small child, I had a lot of shame associated with it.
Oh,
And and the idea that that you did not let anybody see anything you had drawn because you're supposed to be smart,
right.
and this is terrible,
Right.
is something that is indelibly kind of etched in my memory.
Wow.
And so you're climbing up a really steep freaking hill right now.
I also just want to say, like, how often does it always turn into therapy like this quickly?
You would be surprised, Kate. You would be surprised. Yeah, it's it really, it's about the way we see things, and of course, there's a therapeutic aspect to that. So let's go there, Ben. I'm happy to climb that mountain with you. Yeah.
Excellent.
I'm not going to make fun of you.
Yeah.
Yes, you are.
It's the perfect moment.
They always say that, and they always do.
No, you're totally safe here. Yeah, this is the perfect moment for you to let go of that idea. And it's interesting, I'll just start by saying that you're not the only one. So many people have a similar experience to that, and so many people tell me a similar story. And it's normally, it's interesting. I always think, we all work as kids, and some of us stop and some of us don't. We all draw. And the ones that don't end up calling themselves the artists, but really, as children, we don't need to self-identify in order to feel like we have access to the imagination, as artists. We don't need to say, I am an artist, but at a certain point, I think there's a lot of cases like you, Ben, where maybe somebody has said something negative, or you're attempting in some way to really match this two-dimensional reality with the three-dimensional reality, which is always a problem. And that's a problem for the greatest artists, and you're prejudging yourself for that. So we can let that go just to begin with. The great American artist Robert Rauschenberg said he's more interested in what it could become rather than what he would like it to be, which is an interesting way of into this kind of space as well. But anyway, do you guys have the pencil and paper handy, ready to go? Yeah? Awesome. Okay. So to begin with, what we'll do actually is we're going to do an exercise that kind of really explores this idea of inside and outside, and how it is actually written into the physicality of drawing in a really practical, physical way, right? So what I want you to do to begin with is just to find an object in your room, anything at all that's sitting near your table or something you can see. And I want you to just look at it without drawing to begin with, right? I want you to just look at it without drawing. And I want you to try and absorb every aspect of that object, the visual information associated with it. A teacher and philosopher who I spent a lot of time exploring in my 20s, Krishnamurti, used to say that in order to see a tree, you have to let go of the word tree. So there's this idea that the language kind of will get in the way if it's too strong. So let go of the language or the description or the name or the label of whatever it is you're looking at, and just look, right? And now I want you to internalize that image, get as clear a picture as you possibly can, hold it in your mind in the same way that you would hold it in your hands, right? Look at it just as visual information, light and dark, shape and form, right? And hold that just in your mind now. So it's internal now, right? You've gone from something outside yourself, you're bringing it inside, you're holding it in your mind, right? Now we're going to turn away from the object, and I don't want you to look back. And I want you to just look down at the page and draw just from that visual memory, right? Again, there's no right or wrong here. As you draw, you're going to come upon things that you remember, but you're also going to come upon, blank spots and vague areas. That's okay. So you've gone from internalizing something from the outside, and now you're externalizing it again, right? You're kind of purging that image from your mind. And so this drawing will be finished when you feel like you've addressed every aspect of what you're looking at, of your memory really, rather than what you're looking at. It doesn't have to be accurate, but you just want to feel as if there's kind of no stone left unturned in the mind there in relation to that image. So again, don't worry about perfecting the surface in any way. You don't have to make it pretty. You just have to attend to the memory, however vague or however accurate, right? And once you feel like you've got something down on the page that resembles not necessarily what you were looking at, but resembles what you remember about what you're looking at, we'll move on, and we're going to come back to this in a second, yeah? So give you another couple of seconds. Normally we do some fast drawing before this just to get us in the swing, so you guys are going in deep really quickly here. So
it's good.
So what I want you to do now is get a blank page ready and turn back to the object now, right? Turn back to the object, and you can pick up your pencil and just randomly place it anywhere on the page, anywhere at all. And this time, without looking down at the page, only looking at the object, just start to move the pencil in relation to what you're seeing, right? It's really tempting to look down, and I just saw you, Ben, so we're watching.
Is this contour line?
Yeah, this is like a blind contour drawing, but don't look at the page at all. It's really, you'll feel this physical urge to look down. As soon as you feel that, kind of breathe and focus, just focus on the object. That's it. You got it now. That's it. It takes a while because the mind wants to jump in and correct, but you're letting yourself trust your hand a little bit, believe it or not, there is an intelligence in the fingers. Someone said after this exercise once that their hand has an eye on it, So
I kind of want to know what Ben's drawing.
Yeah, right. We're going to get there. This is
okay.
it. Yeah. So once you've done that, you can look down and have a look at the drawing you did. Well, and we might start with Ben, actually. Ben, what I'd like you to do, perhaps, before we talk about it, could you hold up your second drawing to the camera? And we're going to try and guess. Kate and I are going to try and guess what you've done here. All right. This is the second drawing without looking at the page. Bring it a little closer if you can.
Yeah. So I think.
That's it. Got it.
There you go.
Okay. Kate, any idea?
I can't. Hold on. I'm trying to see.
You can raise it up a little bit higher, Ben, if you like. Yeah. Is it a window of some kind?
It is not. No. It is.
Yeah, I can't tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're never going to get mine.
Yeah. Okay. And you can show us the first and tell us about it now. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first one is a little bit more identifiable.
Right.
This is the webcam that is filming me.
Oh, that's actually very good.
That is good.
Ben.
I like it.
And it's sitting on a little tripod. and there are all kinds of details of it that because I wasn't looking at it, I completely forgot about.
Right. Isn't that interesting? Even from a minute after, that we come upon those blank spots in the memory. Yeah.
I feel like this is relating instantly back to eyewitness testimony. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. We realize that memory is so partial. It's never really telling us how things actually are. Right.
So it's interesting. The major feature that I forgot, like completely forgot in the first drawing, and so fixated on in the second one because I remembered that it was missing from the first, that I actually lost the connective tissue between the tripod and the, they're actually, you can see here, the tripod and the camera are not connected in the second drawing, is the microphone. And the microphone, of course, I'm not thinking about because though I'm an excessively verbal person, I'm thinking about visual stuff right now, and it's a camera and it's taking pictures. And so I am not thinking about the microphone. And so it is entirely left off of the first drawing.
Yeah, interesting. That's so fascinating too.
Yeah, that is fascinating.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Well, we can come back to that in a second too, Ben. Let's focus on that. No,
because that's plenty there. Embarrassing to me.
No, you did really well. And I'm curious to hear from you again, just in relation to if you had any preference in relation to the experience itself. Like the drawing's one thing, but I'd be interested to know, was the first exercise easier for you, or was the second one easier? And there's no right or wrong, of course, but different people.
Well, I think both are colored by terror, not terror of the experience. The experience is pleasurable, but terror of the knowing that I'm going to have to turn that page around is, takes me back to some very unpleasant experiences as a small child, as well as an inferiority complex with respect to siblings who were capable of drawing beautifully. And so I would say I went through that whole process with the, oh my God, I'm going to have to turn this thing around thing going on in my head.
And yet you did.
So that's my psychodrama.
That's amazing. Yeah.
I did it because Kate told me to. I always do what Kate says.
That's getting over the mountain and coming down the other side. That's wonderful. But you're not the only one, and I think it's something to do with it being such a personal medium. When you make marks on the page, you're revealing aspects of the way you see things, which is quite fundamental, so it's not an easy thing. And no, I don't know, I'm yet to meet an artist who enjoys showing their work. Really, it's a strange thing. So
before we turn to Kate, we have a comment from Andrew Mcmahon.
Okay.
Andrew, give us your thoughts before we turn to Kate's drawings.
I mean, this is really great. I mean, I was a little skeptical at first whether this could be done over Zoom, but I think you've convinced me that it can. But I was just going to second Ben W. I think if I lived in the Neolithic period, I think my career options would be cave artist or shaman, and I don't think I would succeed at either. They would leave me for wild animals. I just can't do it. But yeah, no, I really like this.
How do you know you're incapable of shamanism?
It's just my intuition, but I guess it would be. I mean, maybe it would work out. Who knows?
Yeah. All right.
Well, if it was,
Kate.
Sorry. Go on. Yeah. No,
it's your turn for humiliation.
Yes. Oh, your audio.
Sorry, I turned my mic off because I ran to the bathroom. I am not like, I'm not a great artist by any means. I have done visual art for like most of my life, but Ben, like I have distinct impressions of like writing in my diary when I was in like high school and things like that, or doing sketches for like art class or like whatever. And it was a very existential process because of course you're creating art for other people in those contexts. And so you're creating it. And in fact, you're not just creating it, you're creating it to be graded, like literally graded by like, so like, I'm like, it's not just putting it into the world and is someone going to buy it or not, but they're going to tell you whether you fail or whether you get like an A.
Yes.
And
I am farther from high school than you are, Kate, by probably 15 years. And I cannot tell you, like, these words you are speaking make like I am sweating, and that causes me anxiety. I'm just saying.
Want to see my hairy pencil sharpener?
Oh, you've given it away.
Oh, fuck yeah. I did it. No one is ever going to get it.
All right, let's see it.
It was fine.
Well, you did well. This is great.
Well, bring it up. Wait, speak so we can see it.
There's hold on, I'll show you the object. I probably shouldn't actually, but that's the object.
That's a nice sharpener too.
It is a nice sharpener. It's very heavy. When you said to take it inside my brain, I literally was like, that would be very heavy inside my brain. And then here is my contour line drawing, which is.
Ooh, I like it. I like that.
Wait, speak. I can't
see it. So it's this.
Okay.
It's all screwed up because I kind of dropped the line off the circle, and I don't know. I kind of like it. It's fine.
Me too. Wow.
So
I like the way the blade sort of merges into the shape of the sharpener,
Right? It doesn't feel like it's the sharpener, it's the defining thing, but the defining thing is not actually the sharpener blade. It's like the circle and the heaviness and like this weird texture on like the edges that I can't quite like. It doesn't like hatching doesn't really quite get it.
So you notice like everything that you described there, Kate, was pretty much about touch, and that's often the case with the blind contour drawings, is that they're more closely related to touch than they are to sight. So the drawing looks more like what it might feel like to hold the object,
Well, that's also interesting given how Ben disambiguated his contour blind drawing and like made it into like, just like cut the microphone off.
Yeah, that's right. Interesting, huh?
Yeah, that's super cool. I think that this is, can I ask a weird question? This is making me think that I have like all of my art supplies. I have this giant easel. I'm like not in Brooklyn anymore. I'm in Cape Cod, and I have this giant easel from RISD that I rescued when I was in college and have carted around. It's like a professional oil paint easel, and have always wanted to have. And I basically,
and by rescue, do you mean stole?
Yes, I stole it. No, it was on a curb, and now I teach abandoned property, and so I could justify why that was abandoned property.
Okay.
But anyways, I have like, for the first time in my life, I'm living in a house, not a studio apartment in Brooklyn for like the last 12 years and not traveling constantly. And I have all of my oil paints and all of my like hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And like I'm not great at painting, but I always like love doing it. And it just like makes me so happy.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know, I want to go back to Brooklyn to get a lot of stuff. But like one of the big things is like my art supplies. There's like $1,000 of art supplies that I've accumulated over the years.
Yeah, they add up. Well, I think you should do
rob
that.
Kate's
apartment. Are you asking?
Yeah,
I think if you need encouragement, I can certainly give it to you.
I'm just like, should I go back? Is it worth going back, driving 10 hours round trip to get like?
All the better.
Supplies?
It's going to make it all the more meaningful when you actually get it, right?
And just think of all the Lawfare podcast episodes you can listen to in that period of time.
That actually is a very compelling argument, Ben. I could catch up on so much. Like, I'm serious. You think I'm joking.
But there's so much, sorry, go on.
I have a different question for you. When you take this experience
Mm.
from, you know, riding the subways, walking around the city of New York, sketching things, to something that's necessarily very interior to the spaces that people are in?
Mm.
How does it change?
That's a great question, Ben. You know, there's something about this medium, these Skype sessions that, I mean, there's a lot about it that's new, obviously, but the one thing that's new in relation to the drawing, which is particularly poignant at the moment, is that we're sharing our internal spaces with each other, right? And it's pretty rare that you would just invite 20 strangers into your home, right? Or if you ever would, right? I guess you'd friends perhaps, but people you don't know. And so it is a very it's a way of inviting people in a really into a personal space without any kind of threat, because obviously you can just turn the computer screen down if you're uncomfortable, right? And so that's a big part of it. That's a big change, is that it's a very kind of personal interaction and a personal to share the drawing process within our own home environments. You know, drawing is very personal, and then we're doing it within our own spaces. That makes for a really kind of quite a intimate, I guess, environment, you know, and also quite a safe one at the same time, because you can always pull out if you need to, you know.
It's so interesting to me though, Ben, that you're so like, you know, like no one expects you to be like a great artist. You're a very good writer. You're an excellent editor. You're like all of these, like you're, you know, you do all of these kind of very, I think, creative, unique endeavors in which you kind of like you talk and you can just talk off the top of your head.
I almost used the word pontificate there.
I did, and you could tell that I was going to say pontificate.
It was coming out, and you caught yourself.
But I just was like, but it's in a great way. Like, it's like people want your opinion and they want to hear what you think about things. They really value it. And it's because you're good at expressing it. And so it's really funny to me that like you feel so insecure about this. I, in comparison, also do all of the things you say, but the things that I feel insecure about are like I feel terrified to share an almost final copy of a draft of a paper with somebody. Like
that gives me no anxiety at all.
I get almost sick to my stomach.
No.
I'm drudging through this law review article right now that I wrote. And I'm just like sick to my stomach thinking of people I know and respect reading it and thinking that I'm a terrible writer and that my work is shit. And I can't even I'm forcing myself to go through it. And it's like literally painful. And I don't understand how you I'm like, oh, a break, and I do contour drawings of a pencil sharpener. This is the best of all possible worlds.
you have to understand. Imagine, Kate, that I had gotten for you, I don't know, a pole vaulting coach.
I thought you were gonna go way worse, be like enema or something.
No, because that's objectively sensitive, right? No, I'm just saying something that you're or ski
I'm not
jumping,
coordinated either, so I would be absolutely terrified to do pole vaulting.
So something that you are aware that you are completely incompetent to undertake, and we were going to do this in a public setting because it's live on YouTube. It's going to be there for a long time. And by the way, it had been something that your whole childhood people had made fun of you. You were the one who sucked at pole vaulting.
Was that really people made fun of you for being bad at art and drawing?
Yeah, because if I draw something, even my handwriting looks like a kindergartner's. And I worked on my handwriting for a long time as a teenager to make it semi-respectable. So I'm no longer embarrassed about my handwriting, but I am aware that when I'm very aware of this to this day, when people talk about the way things look,
Mm.
they very consistently describe things that I don't see.
That's
Really?
And when they describe, I'm very aware of this all the time when people describe the way people look.
Mm.
You know, I don't see the things that they're describing. And they describe these details of people's faces, and I'm at the level of, yeah, she has brown hair, it's pretty long, I didn't notice eye color, and that's kind of about, her skin is very light. That's kind of at the level that I can describe the way somebody looks. And
Is it particular to people, like people's
No.
faces?
no, like, what did you think of the Grand Canyon? It was very big. I was really impressed, you know. We don't talk about visual space the same way we talk about people. I find that, like, people comment so often on the way one another look, that I'm really aware of the fact that on a frequent basis that they're seeing things that I don't see. And so I'm aware of it on a day-to-day basis, that there's just all kinds of visual information that people are processing on a day-to-day basis, including where things are in relation to each other. People routinely will say such and such, it's behind this on this shelf. I may know it's on this shelf, but where it is in relation to something else, and I'll never notice that. And so there's just all kinds of, when I hear people who have good visual sense talking about things, I really do feel like I'm watching my dog sniffing, and kind of aware that there is this whole world of sensory information that is available to the dogs that I do not perceive, but is clearly something that they can process and do something with. And I really am aware of that with respect to people who have good visual sense, either
Right.
artistic or even just observational.
Interesting, Ben, the phrase good visual sense, you know, and I wonder what you're meaning by that. Normally, I think when we think of good visual sense, where we think of accurate, almost photographic representation, you know, and I wonder if there's another way to think or to conceive of that process, so it doesn't feel like something that you're not good at, you know. That it might be something to open up to explore a different way of seeing rather than a lesser way of seeing, you know?
It's a fascinating question, and it's a challenging one for somebody like me, because I mean, it is only within the last 5 to 10 years that I don't feel inadequate walking into a museum.
Right.
I love learning this about you. I didn't know this at all. I would never have guessed this in a million years.
It's just something that, you know, I'm very comfortable with sound. You know, you like put me in a concert hall and I hear all kinds of things that a lot of other people don't hear.
I'm not that way.
Also things that other people hear that I don't hear. But I don't feel like there's this world of information that is available to other people in general that is not available to me. But I do visually. And it's been a kind of long process. You know, I was in the National Gallery not too long ago, looking at some of the modernist stuff in the East Wing, the Paul Clays and the Calder sculptures, and I was, you know, I think it was one of the first times in my life that I was just able to say, hey, I get out of this what I get out of this, and other people get out of it something else,
right,
and something that's probably more, but that's okay.
You're just describing my entire relationship with jazz. Like, this is like, no, I'm not, I mean, like, remember when I said like jazz is bullshit? I just like don't really quite get it. Like, I mean, like, I just like can't hear what everyone else seems to love so much. It just sounds like ding-a-ling-a-lingy on like the piano or like whatever. Like, I'm just like, I can't hear it. That's kind of how I feel about it. I'm like, oh, some of it's fine and seems like moderate to good, but like I can't see it as like it doesn't move me in that way. But it moves other people. Ben Ponte, do you have like this kind of like, what is it like being you are a visual artist? You dedicated your life to it, so like you must feel very differently.
Yeah, I feel differently in the sense both in relation to, obviously, yes, I'm a visual person, but also I feel differently around this whole issue. I kind of feel like what we're talking about is just different kinds of languages, really, and there's this idea that if you can't enter any world for which you don't have the language, and visual information is a language in a sense. I do think it is fundamental. I can understand the idea that some people are predisposed to have greater strengths in visual sense or greater sense in a musical way. That seems really apparent. But I also think that it's the most unusual things and the most exciting things tend to happen when people sort of explore the uniqueness of their own particular way of seeing or hearing, and that might come from somebody who does not necessarily have a natural sensibility in that regard, yeah, if that makes any sense.
I mean, it totally makes sense. I just think that there's like, so my back, for people who have been on the show for a while, they know that I have a background in cognitive neuroscience. I genuinely think that like people's brains follow certain pathways that are like, so for example, like smells, literally where they're processed are very close to memory, the memory center and emotional center of the brain. So like they nestle up against it. So they are very evocative of emotions and things like that. And that makes sense. So that's not particularly unique. A lot of people have that kind of strong reaction to like to smells. But I do think that I think that Ben's description of how he feels about like things on a shelf and about like walking into an art museum, like this is like about like how it makes him feel like how he feels like a dog snuffling around like for a scent or something. Like there's not like a specific thing that he knows that he's looking for, or like there's something or rather he feels as if like dogs and their sense of smell are like people with their visual sense, and he doesn't have that. Is like
bingo.
Yeah, is basically sorry, it took me a second to make the analogy, Ben, but I think that that's like fascinating because I've never heard someone describe it quite like that. So one of the jokes on the show is that Ben and I have all of these crazy animals that I've always come into contact with my entire life. And part of it is because like, I've now realized I just see a baby turtle in a lawn, and like no one else sees it, and everyone else would have missed it. And the same is with like a squirrel, is with like a dead, like a bird with a broken wing on like the side of a sidewalk or something like that. The spider on the sweater, which probably most people would have not like noticed and like whatever until it came over here. But I just think that there's, I am observational, but Ben, like your other things like so I just think that it's kind of lovely that anyways, everyone has their strengths, and it's kind of a little bit.
Yeah. So Ben, we've got to wrap, but tell people where they can find your workshops if they want to delve deeper.
Thanks, man. Yeah, no, my website, of course, benponte.com. You can read about it there. If you're really keen to just get in and book, you can go to Airbnb Experiences, the online section. And of course, you can look at my work on Instagram, like most other artists these days as well. So, yeah, that's probably about it. It's called Drawn from Within. Drawn from Within.
Excellent.
We'll send a link to your stuff.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And Kate, what's our wrap today?
Wait, I thought Christopher was gonna rap. No.
He is.
Oh,
The rap is yours today. What's the good word?
Yeah, it was a great show, and I would just like to say it really feels more and more. I don't know which show is it, 60 already, or
We're almost at 60.
it feels more and more like a psychoanalysis session in times of Freud, and it's, I don't know if it's enjoyable all to the limit or if everybody is having a meltdown at the end who is watching it, but it's great.
Excellent. Thank you, Christopher. You never know whether whether it's coming to fruition or heading to a meltdown, just like the President of the United States. With that, tomorrow is just Kate and me because it's Saturday. So we'll plan the show for the week, and we'll maybe share our deep, dark internet histories. And then Sunday, I've got a mystery guest, and it's going to surprise you. So until then, what do we say, Kate?
if you can't have fun, in lieu of fun, come hang out with us.
Oh, dude, she nailed it today. All right, we're going to close it before.
Bye, Ben.
Bye,
Bye, Ben and Ben. It was so
Thank
great
you.
meeting you,
Thanks
Ben
for
Ponte.
joining us,
You
Ben.
too.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, guys.